Time now for the markets with Leighton. You say the tensions in the Ukraine are affecting the wheat market?
Well, we're going to see if that's still a factor in today's market interview. Stay with us. Also in the headlines this week, firmer demand sustains feeder cattle. Lower prices threaten soybeans, while the nation's big corn crop is projected to get even bigger. As we produce this program Thursday morning, feeder cattle are enjoying higher prices, thanks in part to a strong tumble in grain prices. Analyst Darren Newsom says good demand is also at play in this market. Despite all these positives, Darren's long-term position, however, seems to be watch and wait.
Coming from the live cattle market on the idea that we're still going to have great demand for the feeder cattle. And you've got corn market that just isn't going anywhere. And as we talked about with that previous question, the best odds are that it's going to go down, at least short term. So similar situation here in the fall months. You get a little bit of a rally, gaining back some of what's been lost over the last few weeks. You probably look to go ahead and sell it. Maybe sit back a little bit on the deferred contracts, the winter contracts, maybe even the spring contracts to a certain degree, till we see what really starts to develop.
Well, there's quite a contrast these days between the dairy business in America compared within the United Kingdom. Here, U.S. milk farmers are said to be enjoying some profitable times. However, over in Britain, producers are facing a huge milk surplus and plunging farm gate prices. The problem there in the dairy business is said to be twofold. First, China has reduced purchases from the U.K., and second, Russia has stopped buying milk from Britain due to the sanctions involving the Ukraine situation. Well, let's break from the markets to look at our trivia quiz for this week. Here's the question. What year was the first frozen food sold at retail in the United States? Is the answer A, 1927, or B, 1930, C, 1941, or D, 1950? I'll tell you at the end of the markets. As private estimates continue to point to a larger U.S. soybean crop, the market continues to inch down closer to $10. Analyst Tom Fitzenmeyer says he doesn't see that price trend changing. Tom also says he doesn't see any merit to the idea there will be significant frost damage to bean crops in the north this fall, and that such a development will help boost prices somewhat.
It looks to me like there's a lot of downside in beans from this level. We're going to maintain a weather premium for a while, but you know, the odds of ruining a bean crop from frost, I mean, if it hits your farm and you get nipped, there's obviously some problems, but ruining a crop probably isn't going to be a problem.
The theory that big crops get bigger looks to be holding. A pair of private firms have now released this week survey-based projections of this year's U.S. corn and soybean crops. As you see, the numbers are larger than the USDA's last guess. For example, Allendale sees corn at 14.40 billion bushels. FC Stone estimates the corn crop of 14.59 billion. And the USDA's last estimate for corn, released back in August, was 14.03 bushels. The government's next projection of the U.S. crop will be out on Thursday, September 11th. The wheat trade has been closely watching the situation unfold in the Ukraine. On Thursday morning, Extension Ag economist Brian Williams discussed whether this tension is fading a bit as a significant market factor for wheat. What impact is the continuing tension between Russia and Ukraine having on the wheat market?
Well, I think there's a lot of concern there, and from several different avenues looking at this issue there. One thing to keep in mind is that Russia and Ukraine together account for about 20% of the world's wheat exports. The sanctions that were put in place a few weeks ago really didn't have too much of an impact on the U.S. market here. But something else to think about is there were also sanctions put on the banks in Russia, and that could make it difficult for Russian producers to get loans for next year, and so it could hurt production there next year. Another thing to think about is that there's some potential for additional sanctions in the future. President Obama is meeting at a NATO summit as we speak, and there's no doubt they're discussing additional sanctions, but whether or not that's going to impact agriculture, we really don't know yet.
So this situation could bring more wheat sales to the United States potentially?
There's definitely that potential there. As I mentioned, Russia's a huge player in the global market, and they're expecting a big crop this year. There's also concerns in the Black Sea of them being able to, both Russia and Ukraine being able to get that crop out. Right now they're still able to, but if they have trouble in the future, that could bring more business here.
As we've gotten into September, has that market kind of trended a little more south as far as the prices, or at least this week it has?
Well, we saw the wheat prices come down over the course of the summer, but they kind of leveled off and even tried to rally a couple times in August. But over the last week or so, we've seen them start coming back down a little bit again.
How is the U.S. dollar index playing into this market?
Well, the dollar's been real strong lately, particularly compared to the euro and the Japanese yen. And where that really plays into the market is that while it's good for a U.S. consumer, it's not so good for farmers because it makes our wheat more expensive to potential customers.
You would say the market's probably going to stay about where it is right now, maybe?
For now, it looks like it, yeah.
The number of gasoline stations nationwide offering the E15 ethanol blend could soon break 100. Production company Growth Energy says the forthcoming addition of some stations in the Southeast, in Atlanta and South Florida, will help push E15 past the 100 mark as far as number of total outlets. E15 is also coming soon to Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio in Texas. Before the feature story, let's check out the trivia answer for you for this week. And the correct choice is B. Frozen food under the trade name Bird's Eye was first sold at retail in 1930 in Massachusetts.